I never imagined a single party could feel like the conclusion of everything. My name's Daniel. I'm 38, living in Boston, and for the past 12 years, I've been married to Claire. People who knew us often described us as a dependable couple. Stable jobs, shared responsibilities, weekend routines, the kind of life that seems flawless from the outside. And most of the time it really was. We laughed together, cooked together, rarely argued, and still kissed each night. Or at least, we used to. Lately something had changed. It wasn't explosive. No fights, no betrayals. It was quieter, subtler, long pauses at dinner, ignored texts, a weariness in her voice whenever I tried to talk. I told myself it was just stress, work, life. But deep down, a knot had begun to form in my stomach. Something was slowly slipping away unnoticed, until one night made it impossible to ignore. Claire's bachelorette party should have been fun. I wanted it to be fun. She'd planned it months ahead, insisting she needed one last night with her closest friends, her sisters, her bridesmaids before the wedding. I smiled, agreed to cover transportation, and told her to enjoy herself. But when she left, glittering in sequins and wearing a grin that didn't fully reach her eyes, a hollow feeling settled over me, as if walking into a room after a fire had burned out. I tried to distract myself. I cleaned, ran errands, put on a movie I didn't care much about. I kept checking my phone, not out of suspicion, but from a dull, nagging curiosity. Hours passed, and little signs began to tighten the pit in my stomach. Her friends sent pictures, playful messages, teasing tones that felt almost conspiratorial. She was laughing like I hadn't heard in months, her smile wide, her eyes alive. But when Claire called around 11, something felt off. Her voice was high, bright, breathless. "Daniel, you won't believe how wild this night is," she said, laughter bubbling through the phone. I smiled, trying to share in her excitement, but inside I felt tense. The carefree energy she radiated clashed sharply with the orderly, quiet life we shared at home. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was unease, a creeping suspicion that maybe I wasn't part of that joy anymore. By midnight, I was restless. Messages kept coming, selfies, short clips, giggles in the background. Then came the one that froze me. Claire dancing closely with one of her friend's new boyfriends, someone I didn't know, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles hurt. Maybe it was innocent, but the closeness, the tilt of her head toward him, the carefree energy, it hit me like a cold wave. I tried to rationalize it. It's just a party, I told myself. She can have fun. But another voice whispered darker thoughts. I remembered the dinners when she brushed off my jokes, the nights I reached for her hand and she pulled away, the months when her smiles felt polite instead of genuine. Could all our care and loyalty be replaced so easily by fleeting attention? The night dragged on. Every snap, every laugh felt like it hollowed me out. I realized something I hadn't admitted. I was watching her joy, her excitement, exist without me. I felt invisible, not just unseen, but irrelevant. I stayed composed, but inside a quiet storm was brewing. A storm of realization that the woman I thought I knew, the person I loved, had been drifting away long before the sequins, the music, the champagne. When she called to say she was heading home, her voice was tired but satisfied. "What a night, Danny. Honestly, it was perfect," she said, laughter still in her words. I nodded, smiled softly, and said, "I'm glad you had fun." Calm on the surface, inside I was churning with questions. Was this just a harmless night, or had she crossed a line I hadn't even noticed? Was our marriage, the one I had fought to protect, already fragile beyond repair? When Claire finally walked in, glitter catching the light of our living room, I stood silently. She was flushed, radiant, full of energy, but none of it for me anymore. I tried to greet her warmly, but the words felt hollow. Her night hadn't just been a success. It was a reminder of the distance that had grown between us. We sat on the couch. She recounted stories endlessly. Her friends, the games, the dares, the toasts. All meant to entertain, excite, and celebrate, but I realized they had nothing to do with me. But every story she told cut deeper than I expected. I laughed at her jokes, nodded at her excitement, yet inside, a quiet unease was growing. The woman who had once shared every small triumph, every mundane moment with me now shared her joy elsewhere, almost as if I no longer existed in that world. I tried to speak, to ask questions, to find a place in her narrative, but she didn't notice. Or worse, she didn't care. Her eyes sparkled at another man's humor, her laughter mingling with someone else's presence, and I felt a pang both sharp and dull at the same time. A sudden clarity hit me. This wasn't merely a party. It was a mirror, reflecting a truth I had avoided for far too long. In the following days, the night replayed endlessly in my mind. Every scene, every laugh, every casual touch she had shared with someone else haunted me. It wasn't about jealousy. I knew she hadn't crossed a line physically, but the emotional gap was unmistakable. The warmth I had taken for granted, the intimacy, the small gestures that made marriage feel alive, had quietly eroded over years. All that remained was routine, politeness, and unspoken disappointment. I began noticing patterns I'd overlooked. The way she dismissed my attempts at closeness, prioritized trivial chats with friends over me, offered distant smiles. A string of minor betrayals, almost invisible, until the bachelorette party laid them bare. I realized I had been clinging to a version of her that no longer existed, a version alive only in memory and in the way I wished our marriage to be. That night, I went to bed alone, feeling a strange clarity. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. Years of investing, giving, hoping, and waiting for reciprocity had been quietly absorbed by a relationship slipping apart. And the party, harmless as it seemed, had shone a light on the distance, the indifference, the emotional truth I had avoided facing. The next morning I made a choice. I would no longer chase a connection that no longer existed. No yelling, no arguing, no pleading. Instead, I would reclaim my dignity, quietly, deliberately, firmly. I began with small steps. More space in the living room, fewer interruptions, focus on my own work, my own passions, the life I had neglected while clinging to a marriage that had stopped being a partnership. Every measured action reinforced a simple truth. My emotional well-being could no longer depend on someone unwilling to meet me halfway. In the following weeks, our interactions changed. I was present but detached, attentive but guarded, kind but cautious. Claire noticed, of course, but her attempts at conversation often felt performative, lacking the warmth they once held. I accepted it as the natural consequence of years of emotional neglect. Bitter, yes, but freeing. The marriage I had known was gone, and my response was fully within my control. One evening, she looked at me, eyes searching for a spark that wasn't there. I met her gaze calmly, and in that silence, a message passed without words. I had seen the truth and acknowledged it. I was done trying to reignite a fire long extinguished. My peace didn't come from confrontation or drama. It came from clarity, from stepping back, from realizing that love without reciprocity is simply endurance, and endurance without respect quietly destroys. I don't know what lies ahead for Claire and me. Perhaps we'll continue side by side, coexisting in polite routines. Perhaps distance will grow until it can no longer be ignored. But this I know, the bachelorette party wasn't just a night of celebration. It was the mirror I needed, revealing my true place in the marriage. And in seeing that, I found a space to breathe, a chance to reclaim my identity, and a quiet, unshakable sense of control over my life. Because sometimes, the moment someone else celebrates without you is the moment you finally celebrate yourself.